and the audience can see the website that I shared with you. Definitely want to talk about how SBA is helping small businesses adversely affected by the COVID-19 coronavirus. We know it, we see it, we know that with the majority of Americans being sheltered in place, that means that no one is really patronizing your business. And as a result of that, if you don't have income coming in, you can't have expenses being paid. And there are a lot of things that the Small Business Administration is helping to do, helping small businesses navigate this challenge and get through these very, very difficult times.
John, before we get into it,
yes.
I need to just give some housekeeping before we start into it. Okay? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can.
Everyone should mute their phones. For any questions, please enter them into the chat feature and we will respond at the end of the presentation. I also wanted to share with you that this is being recorded, and GPI has actually created a GPI TV tube. This will be uploaded on our new TV. If you go to GPI Win TV, you'll be able to see this recording and the recording that we did yesterday for the Lunch and Learn. In the next month or two, we'll be launching a new platform. Of course, tonight we're featuring Mr. Banks. John was my former supervisor at SBA, and he taught me the ropes on really understanding the benefits of all of SBA's program. And I'm so appreciative that he was able to help us and participate in this. Tomorrow, we'll have another master's class with Mr. Juzane. He's going to talk about how he built his company up to almost $110 million in contracts. As always, I have the weekly free orientation sessions on Saturday from 11:30 a.m. to April 11 from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Please share, bring people into the community as we all learn this process together. Again, GPI Win TV is where the recording will be placed from yesterday and today's. With that being said, John, thank you again for coming to our community and impacting us and giving us firsthand knowledge of exactly how this process is really working for small businesses. I'll let you go ahead and jump into it now that you started out, but I have the website up, and I also forwarded everyone who registered the information that you sent over to me earlier. So I have the programs up and we're ready to go. Thank you.
All right. Again, thank you again, Paula, for bringing this information up. And we're looking at the funding options, and I guess that's where I wanted to start at in this particular regard. But there's one thing I do want to share with everybody. Right now, everybody, if you're a small business, you're challenged. You're vulnerable as well, too. And one of the things that we're seeing is very, very disappointing to us is that there are a bunch of bad actors looking to take advantage of you. We see folks sending out emails saying, hey, if you want to do this, click on this particular link, provide us with your personal information, and we'll help you out. We see some bogus sites that are looking like SBA, but they're not really SBA, and people exchanging information there. And I want to start off by saying, be very careful, okay? I'm going to talk about a couple of programs, and both programs is either administered by the U.S. Small Business Administration or your commercial participating bank. And I want to suggest that if you're applying for either program, please make sure that you start off by typing in sba.gov in your browser. If you go to sba.gov, there's links right at the top of the page, and you can just click on it and it will navigate to this particular page if you don't see the web address. It is very unfortunate, and I have spoken to numerous businesses saying, hey, I got this email, is this legit? I submitted my application already. That's not a federal government website. That's not government information that's being submitted. I know that a lot of small businesses are vulnerable, but please, 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 please be very, very careful, be very, very vigilant, make sure you know what you're doing in terms of providing your personal information. Now, with all that being said, on the bottom of the page, in the middle of the page, you see the funding options, and we're going to talk about each one of those programs. And I want to start off to the right under the SBA debt relief. And this is really for the percentage of audience that have either an existing SBA loan, 7A loan, a 504 loan, or an SBA-backed microloan. I should mention that 504 is the real estate loan program that SBA uses for either real estate or heavy equipment, and is funded by the sale of a debenture. Okay. What SBA is doing, if you have an existing SBA loan, SBA is paying your principal and interest payments on all of your loans that are due from March 27th through September 27th for 6 months, principal and interest. You don't have to pay the loan payments. You don't have to pay SBA back for this particular thing. This is all a part of the assistance that was provided under the CARE Act. I would strongly recommend that you reach out to your lender just to make sure that you're covered in that particular program. It's made available to just about everybody. The only person or the only businesses that may have some challenges associated with this is if you are in a delinquent or default type status. Everyone else that was current prior to the beginning of this particular corona disaster, you're covered. Speak to your lender. I want to jump over to the economic injury disaster loan next, and then I'll come back to the SBA bridge loan, if you don't mind. So, sure.
Okay.
Paula, you about to say something?
No, I have it up.
Okay. So I'm jumping to the economic injury loan, and I'm just going to give you the highlights of the feature. By now, you've probably heard so many different things about this particular program. Just want to highlight the specific features, and then I can answer any questions during the question and answer period regarding this. So what is this loan about? This loan is up to $2 million, and the proceeds are used exclusively to help you pay your fixed debt. That includes, in some instances, your payroll, but we'll talk about payroll in this particular program a little bit more in depth, your accounts payables, your other bills, your electric, your gas, utilities, your rent, your mortgage payments, all of that stuff that you would have been able to pay had it not been for the COVID-19 coronavirus. I will tell you that this program is not intended to replace lost sales, lost profits, or for business expansion. You cannot use loan proceeds to buy new equipment. You cannot use loan proceeds to consolidate loans. It's only to help you meet your fixed expenses that you would have normally been able to pay had it not been for the disaster. Now, the interest rate for this loan program is 3.75 for small businesses. It's 2.75 if you are a private nonprofit organization. And both of these loan interest rates are fixed throughout the life of the loan. The terms of the loan is up to 30 years. And one of the reasons why the term is so far out is that we really don't want this particular loan program to be a burden to your particular business when normal operations resume. So by having a 30-year fixed loan at 3.75% if you're a small business, that monthly payment is going to be so small that, again, when you're resuming normal operations, it won't be a significant debt burden for your particular company. The term is up to 30 years, but I will tell you that SBA will not go out any further than what your business can demonstrate that it can reasonably support. And even though it's 30 years or a shorter period of time, you can pay it off at any particular time. There's no prepayment penalty associated with this. There is nothing along those lines. So what are we looking at to determine eligibility for this loan? I'm going to start off with personal credit history. Personal credit history is one of the things that we're going to look at. And I will tell you that we have approved loans with people with credit scores just at the 560 level. Mm. In the very beginning of this process, if you had a credit score below 560, you got an automatic decline letter. But even then, we stopped because SBAs are really trying to make this particular program available to all small businesses adversely affected. So if you have a credit score below 560, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get an automatic decline. We will probably work with you to get some additional information just to see if we can make that a positive loan. The biggest thing that we're looking at is repayment ability. We have to determine that based on that low interest rate and based on a 30-year term, that your business can demonstrate the ability to repay this particular loan. And again, by having it at a 30-year term over with 3.75%, the monthly payment is in many instances so small that it's very easy to kind of demonstrate. That is the basis of the economic eligibility loan program. There was a couple of enhancements that was made. On March 27th, the President signed into law the CARES Act provision. And one of the things that program, that's his signature on that legislation did, was created an enhancement to the economic injury disaster loan program. And in it, it basically said that for small businesses that are applying for this particular assistance, if you check off on the application that you are interested, you can qualify for a $10,000 non-refundable grant in addition to your economic injury disaster loan. Mm-hmm. Let me stop right here. So this particular law, when the President signed it on March 27th, that following Monday, which was a week ago yesterday, is when the applications were reflected that particular grant request. Now, if you have applied for this particular loan program, and this is very important, prior to last Monday, if you apply for this program prior to last Monday, what you need to do is to resubmit your application.
And John, can I ask a quick question?
I'm gonna get there. Let me get this point. Let me get this point across, and I'll let you ask the question.
Okay.
So you have to reapply, and the reason why you have to reapply was the grant provision did not exist prior to the President signing that legislation, and you have to specifically request it. It's not an automatic. Now, when you go back in and you do reapply, the good thing is the SBA application has been abbreviated, so it will only take you 10, 15 minutes top to redo your application. Make sure you put a check in the box saying, yes, I want this grant. And then the good news is you don't necessarily lose your place in line. So when SBA gets your application and see that you submitted a supplemental application, they will marry the two files together and you'll be able to qualify for that particular benefit. You have to definitely request it in order to get it. And so if your application was submitted prior to a week ago yesterday, you have to reapply. Now, Paula, I'm gonna let you ask your question before we move on.
Is that something that's being administered directly from SBA, or is that something that's coming from the bank?
I'm glad you asked that question. The only way that you can apply for the economic injury disaster loan and the grant associated with it is through your application through the SBA. And if you cannot find our application on the website, first of all, start off at our landing page, sba.gov. You will see all kinds of links that will say coronavirus assistance for coronavirus, funding for coronavirus, and it will get you to the page that Paula has in front of you. And then if you click on the link for the EIDL program, it will explain the program to you in detail, and then it will show you a link where you actually begin your application. It's under the EIDL loan advance portion.
Okay.
And like I said, that $10,000 is available to you. One thing I do want to mention also on this particular loan program, collateral. If your loan request, and again, it goes all the way up to $2 million, but if your loan request is $25,000 and under, there's no collateral required for this particular loan program. If it's above $25,000, then SBA will accept whatever collateral. We'll look for specific items for collateral, and then I'll explain in detail a little bit more about our collateral policy. So the way that the collateral is working, the primary asset that we're looking for to secure these loans is commercial real estate. And we don't care if we're taking the 50th lien on that real estate and it's upside down, there's no equity in it. In fact, you are underground on it. We're still going to secure it with a lien on that particular property. If your business does not have any commercial real estate available, the next instrument we're going to look at is personal real estate. And again, same principle. If it's upside down, no equity, we're still going to file a lien on that particular property. If your business does not own commercial real estate, and if you don't personally own any residential real estate, then the next instrument that we're going to use is business assets to secure the loan. I want everybody on the phone to understand this. If collateral is short or not available, we will not decline the loan on the basis of collateral. That's an SBA policy as it relates to this particular assistance. But if collateral is available, we will secure a lien. We expect you to make it available to us if it's over $25,000. Now, before I go into the SBA bridge loan, I want to explain what happens when you get the application. And I believe this is one of the pre-questions that was submitted to us. So when you apply under the new application system that went into effect a week ago Monday, one of the only documents that you will receive is a document that says, we have your application, here is your application number. That is the only document that you're going to receive from SBA. For just a minute. That is the only document that you're going to receive from SBA. That is your cue to let you know that your application has been received by SBA. It is in our cycle. Question that you should be asking next is, how long will this take?
Correct.
We have been told that the process will take upwards of 3 weeks. 3 weeks, you should hear from SBA talking to you about your eligibility. Now, one of the things I will talk about, I mentioned that this particular application for this assistance, it will take you 10 to 15 minutes, and primarily it's because we're asking for very limited information.
Correct.
When the previous application was administered, we asked for a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of attachments, and some other things. I will tell you that although the application is abbreviated, if we need some additional information to justify your eligibility, when the loan processing center gets to your application, you will be asked to provide that information.
So what are they looking for in that $10,000 grant as far as eligibility? And what additional documentation may they be requesting?
The way that the $10,000 eligibility grant will work is all you have to do is submit that application. And I want to make this clear too. Even if, God forbid, your application is declined, you still qualify for the grant, and the grant is still non-refundable, meaning that you don't have to pay it back.
And why would they decline it? What would be some reason?
Like I said, there are two things that we're looking at. We talked about the credit score, and we said that we're very generous and lenient with the credit score policy.
Okay.
But the only other reason why SBA would decline it is if you cannot demonstrate with a 30-year term and 3.75% interest rate that you can repay this particular loan.
But the $10,000 grant, are we talking about, that's what's confusing. The grant and then there's a loan.
It shouldn't be confusing.
Huh?
So when you submit your application for an idle request, okay, the first $10,000 is a grant.
Okay.
You don't have to pay that back.
Okay.
All righty? Anything above $10,000, you do have to pay it back.
Okay.
On the loan, your repayment does not begin until 1 year after you receive your first disbursement.
Okay.
So let's say hypothetically your loan was approved today, you got your first disbursement a week from today. You don't have to begin paying this loan back until 1 year from next week in that example. So you have 12 months to begin repayment. And again, that is designed that way to help you when everything is said and done and we resume normal operations. It is designed that way to give you an opportunity to build back up your business and get back to a normal routine.
So do I have to apply for two? Do I have to apply for both? Do I have to apply for the grant and the loan? Or are they two separate? Can I get the grant without the loan is the question.
So when you are filling out your EIDL loan application, on the last page, it's going to ask you a question. Do you want the $10,000 grant?
Okay.
You have to put a check in that particular box.
Okay.
If you don't put a check in that box, you don't qualify for the grant.
Okay.
If you do put a check in the box, you qualify for the grant. The grant will be dispersed. More likely, it will be dispersed before you get your loan proceeds. And the $10,000, you don't have to pay back. Anything above the $10,000, you do have to pay back, and it's within that 30-year term at 3.75%.
So
you make sure that everybody's clear on that.
So the loan after you still have to, you're still applying for the loan outside of the grant. The grant is just, so are you still requesting a certain dollar amount from the loan program?
You're still submitting your application for the loan, yes. Okay. Now, you'll probably get the grant before SBA makes disposition on your loan request. If you feel that you don't need the loan at that particular time, you don't have to close it. I wouldn't recommend that you completely deny it. Let's say, for example, SBA says, hey, you qualify for $100,000. Okay. And you have the $10,000 in hand, and right now you don't feel that you need it. Well, that approval will remain in effect for up to 6 months. So if you don't need it now, but God forbid this thing goes on longer than anybody anticipated, and now you find that you do need some additional money, just as long as you go back to SBA and say, hey, I'm ready to tap into the proceeds of the loan that you approved for me, you can. If we approve you for $100,000 and you only need $50,000, you can always go back to SBA and say, hey, you know what, I don't need that much. I only need 50 right now. If we approve you for $100,000 and you need $200,000, you can always go back to SBA with additional justification to explain why you need the additional money, and we will modify the loan request at that particular time.
But the application,
I'm spending a lot of time.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The application that's what's confusing. So you're completing the application for the grant through SBA, but you have to complete the after loan application through your bank. Is that what I'm understanding? No,
forget about the bank. The bank does not have anything whatsoever to do with this loan program.
Okay.
Everything is done through SBA.
Okay.
We will talk about the bank request. Again, you apply through this loan for this particular loan, including the grant, by going to sba.gov and just follow the link for coronavirus assistance. And you'll come across a link that talks about the EIDL loan, the advance, the grant, everything else. And the way that you apply for the grant make sure everybody understands this, is submitting a loan application. And on the last page of that loan application, it's going to ask, do you want this $10,000 grant? You say yes.
Okay.
And that will put you in the queue to get the grant. And it will also put you in the place to qualify for this economic injury disaster loan.
Okay.
I want to go back to something. I want to make sure that everybody understands this. Okay. The loan proceeds for this particular program is used to pay your fixed debt, your payroll. And we'll talk about payroll in a minute, because if you're applying for the payroll protection program loan, then you might want to modify the request for payroll in the EIDL program. I'll explain what that means when we get there. But this program pays for your accounts receivable and all other bills, all your other expenses, your utilities, your rent, your mortgage payments, everything else that you would have been in a position to pay had it not been for the disaster.
And do you have to pay do you have to provide documentations as part of that loan, such as a mortgage? What if it's a home-based business? Will they be able to recoup some of that?
Some of the things that you're going to have to pay, when you're filling out the application, we're only asking for a little bit of information. We're going to ask for your sales, your net sales. We're going to ask you for your cost of goods sold. If you're in a business that has a cost of goods sold, we're going to ask for your EIN number. You should probably have that information available prior to applying. Okay, that's it. Now, if after we look at that information and make a determination that we need some additional information, we will definitely ask you for it. But that's all you need to get started on this particular process.
Okay.
The rest of the information is going to be your business name, and make sure that you use the same business name, not your doing business as name, your corporate name as it is expressed on your federal income tax returns.
Okay. Okay.
Now, don't want to confuse everybody, and I hope that everybody understands this economic injury disaster loan is a loan that is administered 100% by the SBA.
Okay.
It will take about 3 weeks before you get disposition on this particular loan request. And so one of the things that we did, a lot of small businesses came back and said, I can't wait that long. So I'm going to jump to another bullet under the funding options tab that Paula has in front of you and talk about the Express Bridge loan. All right, this particular loan program is that it is a bridge loan to give you quick access to your financing before you get the proceeds from the economic injury loan. In many instances, you can go to your bank, or there's only selected banks that are participating in this program, and apply for this bridge loan up until the time SBA makes disposition on your economic injury loan. If it takes 3 weeks for SBA to do it, maybe this bank can do it in a week to get you your money on time. Now, the maximum size of this loan is $25,000. I will tell you that it's expensive in that the maximum interest rate that the bank can charge is prime plus 6.5%. Don't be overly concerned with that, because and the maximum term is 7 years. But don't be overly concerned with the interest rate, because the maximum that you want to hold it out for is maybe a month, no more than 2. Because by that time, the decision will be made on your idle loan, and you're going to use the idle loan proceeds to take this loan out.
Okay.
Unless you want to pay prime plus 6.5% over 7 years.
Right.
I wouldn't. So that's what that particular loan program is all about. If you can't wait until SBA makes a decision on your bridge, on your idle loan, you have the option of going for the bridge loan. Let me talk about when SBA does make the decision. So what happens? And here's another thing I want to make absolutely certain, because a lot of misinformation is going out about this. There is no cost whatsoever to apply for the SBA idle loan. None. So you see a email offering saying, hey, give us your credit card number and we will help you with your application and everything else and all. Be leery. There are a bunch of bad actors out there looking to rip you off. There is no cost associated with applying for this loan. Now, the only potential cost that you may incur is when we approve your loan, and let's say we're taking a lien on your commercial real estate. You may be responsible for the costs associated with recording the lien on that commercial real estate property as a closing item, but that's it. That's the only cost that you will incur on the economic injury disaster loan. And again, that loan is administered directly from the Small Business Administration.
Okay.
I keep emphasizing that because it's important. You go to SBA.gov to make sure that you are not on a phantom or a mischief site. You can start off at SBA.gov and just click on the links under coronavirus until you get to the lending program. You'll land eventually at the page that Paula has up on you. You click on the learn more information. It will explain the program, and then immediately following that explanation, there is a link there to click to start the application process. If you spend more than 30 minutes on the application, it's a miracle.
Okay.
All right. So now let's talk about the big granddaddy of them all. The Paycheck Protection Program. All righty. This program can go as high as $10 million. What it is used to do is to support your payroll. And let me give you some history behind what your federal legislatures had in mind when they created this program. Right now, a lot of you have laid off folks, or you can't afford to keep folks on your payroll. And if you lay your staff off, especially if you got some talented individuals, they can't make ends meet. They're going to look for another job. And now when everything resumes back to normal, and you try to call back your workforce, your experienced workforce, they already got other jobs at other companies. And now you got to start the process all over. Part of the thought process behind this particular program is to help you avoid that. In that, what will happen is the SBA is going to give you up to 8 weeks of payroll to support your employees. If you use the loan proceeds just to pay your employees for 8 weeks, at the end of that 8-week period, this loan is forgiven, meaning that you don't have to pay it back. Now let's start off and talk about some particulars. This loan program, and it has evolved from the time it was talked about to the time we got some preliminary information, and it changed all the way up to the last minute when the final regulations was published last Thursday. Not last Thursday, a week from last Thursday. Originally, when it was talked about, this was going to be a 4% 10-year loan. Then it was a 0.5% 2-year loan, and ultimately it settled at a 1% 2-year loan. I will tell you that for this particular program, you can use the proceeds for other things other than payroll. You can use it to pay your utilities and to pay some other expenses. But I will caution you, because when it comes time to get this debt forgiven, 75% of what can be forgiven has to be for payroll purposes. And the remaining 25% can be used for non-payroll purposes. You got your mortgage payment in it, you got your rent, you got your utilities. Anything beyond that 25%, you have to pay back within a 2-year period at 1%. Make sense?
Yes.
All right, now let's talk about this. One thing that's very, very important. If you got your economic injury disaster loan and you used a portion of that to pay your payroll expenses, Well, that's problematic. You can't use two federal programs for the same reason.
Hmm.
So if you use a portion of your idle loan to help you meet your payroll, what will happen is whatever you approve for on the payroll, the Paycheck Protection Program, it will take out the portion of the idle loan that was used for payroll purposes. We'll take out everything with the exception of the $10,000 grant, because the grant, again, you don't have to repay. What my office had been advising folks on when you're looking at the two programs, we're saying, you know what, use your payroll, use the Paycheck Protection Program for your payroll only. Because we know at the end of that 8-week period, 100% of that is reimbursable.
Mm-hmm.
Use the idle loan program to pay for your electric, your other operating expenses, because you have up to 30 years to pay that back. Whereas if you did it under the Paycheck Protection Program and the portion that is not reimbursable, you have to pay that back within 2 years and is at 1%.
Mm-hmm.
And even at 1% over a 2-year period, you're paying a lot more on a monthly basis than you would with a 3.75% loan over 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make some strategic decisions along those particular lines. But one of the things that we've been advising folks to do is to ensure that you are getting the most out of both loan programs is to use the idle loan for your normal operating expenses, except payroll, and use your payroll under the Paycheck Protection Program, because when everything is said and done, all of that can be waived at the end of the 8-week period.
Okay.
I'm going to stop right here, Paula. I'm going to let you be the first to ask any questions that you may have relative to the information I shared with your audience, and then we'll open it up for audience questions and answers. Do you have any questions first?
Can you apply for all four, or does it preclude you from providing for multiple programs?
In theory, yes. If you qualify if you have an existing SBA loan and you want to do the debt relief, SBA is going to pay your monthly principal and interest payments on your existing SBA loan for 6 months. If you put an idle loan application in and you want to apply for the SBA bridge loan, you can do that. In the payroll protection program, you can put an application in. And really, since that program kicked off, this SBA Express bridge loan has really died, because most of the people are going for the payroll protection program. I'm trying to find some information I want to share with you. Give me 1 second. I got to open up my email. So this program officially kicked off last Friday. Last Friday is when it opened up. And as of early this afternoon, SBA has already made in excess of $80 billion to small businesses under this program.
I think the bottleneck is with the banks, because I've gone through it. And the banks, my bank is with SunTrust and Truist, and they don't seem to, there's a disconnect in the applications and them even accepting them. Mm-hmm.
So let me walk you through that particular process, because that has been a challenge. This is the first time ever in the history of SBA that we had to administer a program this size.
Mm-hmm.
In our best year, we've been around since 1953, the most that we have done at one particular time was $30 billion over a 12-month period of time in terms of making SBA loans available to small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
This program, it started on April 3rd and it runs through June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about 2 months, and the size is $349 billion that is in this particular program. 30 billion was the best at any particular time SBA has done in the 12-month period of time, and we're talking about $340 billion for this particular program for the life of it within a 2-month period of time. And when we kicked it off, there was a lot of things going in. Banks had a lot of questions about how to kick it off. Our federal legislators saying, hey, our small businesses are hurting. We want to get this program up and running and started right away. We can't wait any longer. So we kicked it off. A lot of banks they had a lot of different questions as far as they want to make sure that they understood it. They wanted to know what their roles, their responsibilities were, and everything else in between. And a lot of banks could not get all of their questions asked. And keep in mind, the legislation for this and the final rules were not disseminated to the banks until until Thursday, April 2nd, and the program went live April 3rd. So a lot of banks were saying, hey, wait a minute, hold on. Where are we? I got some questions. Let me just take a breather till I understand. So a lot of banks are now getting all of the details and they're deciding where we're going. One of the other big challenges that we're finding, demand for this product is so significant that banks are saying, I can't accommodate everybody right now. So right now I'm limiting my application to my existing customers. If you're not a customer of the bank, you can't come to me right now. And then while some of the other banks are still trying to understand and digest all of the things that is contained in the legislation, they're telling their customers, hold on, we haven't made a decision yet. One of the things that we anticipate happening is after this initial demand dies down a little bit more, if your bank is not participating, for example, you will be able to go to another bank. Right now, they're probably going to tell you, no, we're not only accepting applications from our existing customers. But there is not going to be a bank out there that can't use this program strategically to try to get more business in that bank. And if you go from bank A to bank B, you best better believe that bank B is going to say, I'll make this loan for you, but you got to transfer all of your deposit relationships with us and we will be your banker moving forward. So it's a tremendous opportunity for them to get new customers into their institution by making this loan available. But they probably won't do this right away, only because they have to take care of their customers first. So I say, if you are in a situation where your bank is not doing it and you can't find another lender, just give it until the end of this week, early next week. You'll see a lot more banks making themselves available to you after they satisfy the initial demand from their existing customers.
And how does SBA back the loan? How does that, because I haven't gone through that process myself in a previous business. The bank approves the loan and then it goes immediately to SBA for you all to guarantee it and back it. And how much are you backing the loan?
The loan is backed 100% by the federal government.
Okay.
Meaning that if something happens, we're on the hook to repaying the loan to the bank 100% of the balance. The bank has no risk with this particular loan.
Is that automatic? It automatically, once they
it is automatic. If they do everything, we're going to tell them how to close the loan and how to do everything else. If the bank does everything that we tell them to do, their risk is protected, regardless to what happened in the loan situation.
Okay, very good. That's a win-win. And there's no collateral, and you don't have to personally guarantee.
No collateral, no personal guarantees. Yes, it's a win-win situation for literally everyone. And we did it this way because we wanted to get the money out there as quickly as possible. And because we are one SBA, we have 2,000 employees nationwide versus 4,000 banks out there. We figured that by making them a part of this particular solution, that we can get the money out there a lot quicker than we could have done on our own. And that's part of the reason why this program was created and the banks are involved. Now, I want to reiterate this point. if you're applying for this particular program, the payroll protection program, make sure you go to your bank's website. Don't follow any links on any emails. Don't do anything along those lines. There are a lot of bad actors out there. Type it in. Be on the safe side. You don't want to give your information to some of the criminals that are out here just looking and trying to take advantage of your vulnerability at this very, very difficult time. Paula, let's open up the line so we can answer some of the questions from your audience.
Okay. I've had them put it in the chat. I have Dr. Elisa. Her question is, why is it so hard for small businesses to receive these funds? Why not view application, verify the business existence, and send funds? This bank stuff is a mess. That's just the process, Dr. Elisa.
Thank you for answering that one for me. This payroll protection program is probably the easiest one that you have to do. It's a very simple application. You do have to provide information regarding what your historical payroll was. Your eligibility is based on what you have historically paid payroll-wise prior to the disaster period, and then we go from there.
And what was the last the date for the reapplication? Someone asked. Can you put the date you said that people will have to reapply?
Okay, so on March 27th, the president signed into law the CARES Act program, which contains the provisions for the $10,000 grant. That provision was incorporated in the SBA application process beginning on March 30th. If you submitted your SBA application for an EIDL loan prior to March 30th, you should have received an email from SBA saying, go back and reapply. And if you didn't get an email, it probably went to your spam filter. And what you want to do is make sure that you add @sba.gov to your safe list. Because if they're working on your application and they need to get some information or they want to tell you that your loan was approved, you don't want that going in your spam filter. Okay, thank you. I think we answered the question from Ernest. He talked about grant versus loan. The grant part is something that you're not going to have to repay. Do you have to justify anything with that grant or provide any supporting documentation? No. And the grant is only with the EIDL loan program.
Okay.
Now, there is a forgiveness portion. That's not with the EIDL. It's with the Paycheck Protection Program. This is the one that you apply with the bank. And the forgiveness portion is if you use it 100% to pay your payroll, then 100% of that is forgiven at the end of that 8-week period. If you use it for payroll and some of your other expenses, then 75% of the forgiveness is applicable to your payroll, and you can go up to 25% on your non-payroll related expenses. If there's a balance after that, after you use up all of your forgiveness eligibility, you have to repay that loan in 2 years at an interest rate of 1%. Okay. So the loan program that you apply for with the SBA, it contains the $10,000 non-refundable grant. Under the Paycheck Protection Program, we can cover up to 8 weeks of your payroll and forgive that portion at the end of the, I think it's end of June is when you could first begin asking for forgiveness under that particular program.
Okay, so you can apply for both the Paycheck Protection, yes, and the EIDL loan.
But if you use EIDL to support your payroll, you can't use both for the same purpose.
Correct.
So what will happen is that SBA will refinance the portion of your EIDL loan from the proceeds of the Paycheck Protection Program, whatever portion you use for payroll. And ideally, when you sit down and you look at the two programs and do the math, it makes a lot of sense to go to the Paycheck Protection Program to handle all your payroll and use the EIDL loan for everything else.
That makes sense. And a question was, who was the lenders? They will have to be SBA preferred lenders, or are you going through any of the CDCs?
So we are actually opening up the spigot so that any bank can apply.
Okay.
If a bank that does not have a relationship with SBA, they can come in and say, hey, I want to help my small business clients with the Paycheck Protection Program, and we have a mechanism for them to sign up.
Okay.
So if you're with a bank that does not have a relationship with the SBA, the first thing that you want to do is ask them, are you applying to become an SBA lender for the purposes of this particular program? And the reason being is that you probably are going to have to apply from them, directly to them. Because most banks, especially right now, they're only entertaining requests from their existing customers. As demand dies down, I can see a lot of banks say, hey, let's open up the spigots to allow non-bank customers an opportunity to apply so we can gain their business. Paula, I wanted to make sure that I share this with you as well. This program opened up on April 3rd, which was last Friday.
Mm-hmm.
It runs until June 30th. If you wait until July 1st to put your application in, it's gone.
Okay, good. Very good.
There's a total of $849 billion that was put in to fund all of these loans under this particular program. The president has already said that if the money runs out, they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that the small businesses have what they need to get through this difficult challenge.
Okay, I hope everyone heard that. June 30th is the time. You all need to position yourself now. Don't wait till the last.
Don't wait until June 30th. Don't wait. Put the application in. If you're applying for the EIDL loan, don't wait. Put the application in. Even if you don't think that you don't qualify, put the application in. Like I said, the policies are changing and SBA is doing everything in its power. I mean, do you know of anybody that had a 560 credit score that can get a loan?
Nope.
Not many.
Me either. Very good. So, I'm still muting everyone. Hold on. Mm-hmm. Hold on, I need someone to mute. Okay. The other question is, if you only filled out the application for the 10K grant, will you be considered if you haven't filled out the loan application?
The loan application and the 10,000 grant is all the same application.
Okay.
So you will get one with the other. Now, let me stop right here, because Paula, one of the things that we're seeing is that people are saying, you know what, I want the $10,000 grant. I don't want to have to pay back the loan, so yes. I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
I'm going to suggest that when SBA come back to you and say you qualify for $100,000, don't decline it.
Okay, gotcha.
Don't decline it. Why? Because number one, we don't know how long this thing is going to go.
Good.
And if you decline it,
mm-hmm.
and 2 months later things get worse, and you need money, well, you just threw away $100,000 that you had. You have up until 6 months to claim that money from the date that they say you're approved for it.
Very
and
good.
If you don't need it right away, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if this thing goes 5 months down the line,
mm-hmm.
you got $100,000 loan that you can tap into.
For 30 years. That's 30
exactly.
years. For 30
and even
years.
if you don't need all $100,000, you take the portion that you need to get you through this particular process, mm-hmm. and then you can just cancel the rest. But don't decline it, because we don't know. And a lot of people say, John, hey, I'm just going to take this $10,000 and run with it. I'll be all right. Well, you don't really know. We don't know what the future holds.
Mm-hmm. Very good, John. Very good. It sounds, Samara says, it sounds like if I'm a home-based business that only works with independent contractors, 1099 employees, that this loan program wouldn't be for me, and I don't have any expenses like payroll or electricity.
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that question. Who was that again? Samara?
Samara.
Samara. So here's the thing. When you are submitting your payroll information for the payroll protection program, we're looking primarily for your W-2'd employees. If you pay an employee via 1099, they will not count toward your eligibility. Why? Because a 1099 employee is an independent contractor, and that independent contractor can apply directly for this assistance on their own.
Can apply for
So we're
what?
only going to count your W-2'd employees for the purposes of determining your eligibility.
They can apply for what? The independent contractors?
They can, if you're an independent contractor, you can apply directly to your bank for the payroll protection program because you are a small business.
Okay, very good.
All right, my earbuds are dying. Hang on for just a minute. Let me just switch to my phone. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second, Paula.
Okay, very good. Is this good information, everyone?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, very, very good.
It makes sense. It makes sense. So
Yes, it does. And I'm glad you had somebody explain it to us because this is good.
this is, I don't know if he had to hang up or he said he was going to jump back on. But it makes sense. So what he's saying, what I'm hearing, I don't know if everyone else is hearing, that everyone needs to be applying and just putting your name in the pot. And if they approve you, that's even a better thing because now you have 30 years to pay off that loan at a 3.75% interest rate. And you're not going to be under the gun, and you don't have to collateralize, and you're not having to guarantee anything. That's never been done before.
Paula, this is Tracy. I'm very interested to see how they manage the debt, even though we can use this to pay accounts payable, but he clearly said we could not do debt consolidation. So
Correct.
I would love for him to elaborate a little bit on that.
Okay. Yes.
Hello, Paula.
Yes.
Hi, this is Lloydie. Question, so if you are a startup business, are you eligible to apply as well?
I'll have to ask him. Yes.
I'm sorry, Paula. I'm back. I don't know what happened, but we got disconnected, so I didn't hear the complete question. So can the caller repeat the question?
Yes. What I was saying is, if you are a startup business, are you eligible to apply as well?
Startup business for the PP, the payroll protection program, you had to be in business prior to February 2015, on or before February 15, 2015.
Okay, alrighty. And with that information, with that, when you're applying, you just have to provide your W-2s, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, I said 2015. I meant to say February 15th, 2020. You had to be in business on or before that particular date under the payroll protection program.
Okay, alrighty. Thank you.
So even if you have no revenues or anything, you could still apply?
So here's the challenge. And the way that eligibility is determined is if you've been in business for a longer period of time, they're going to ask the bank, your lender is going to ask you to provide payroll records for your business over the last 12 months. They're going to take an average and then multiply, do a to determine what your monthly payroll records are, and multiply that times 2.5 times to determine your eligibility. 2.5 months, 2.5 months will be your loan eligibility. That covers the 8 weeks, and the 0.5 covers other costs. And like I said, that other cost can be used to help pay for, you know, your electric, your gas, your mortgage payment, some of the other operating expenses. That's how the eligibility is going to be determined. Now, when you're starting off, we will go back as far as how many months you've been in business to help determine what a normal period of time for your business, your normal payroll is during the time that you've been in business.
Okay. So if I'm, as an example, I'm a small business. I give out distributions. Will distributions be considered to pay myself by paying distributions? Will that be, how would you look at that from the owner's perspective?
So I'm glad you asked that question, and just bear with me for 1 second because I got to bring up what is covered under this particular program. So give me 1 second.
And I have a question after that, if I can.
All right, before you ask your question, let me explain this. What qualifies as payroll costs? Payroll costs consist of compensation to employees whose principal place of residence is in the United States in the form of salaries, wages, commissions, or other similar compensation, cash tips, or the equivalent based on the employee's record of past tips, or in the absence of such, a reasonable good faith employee estimate of tips, payments for vacation, parental, family, medical or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, payments for the provision of employee benefits consisting of group health coverage, including insurance premiums, retirement payments, state and local taxes assessed on compensated employees, and so forth. Those are the things that are covered under salaries. One thing that I did not mention is your federal taxes. Your federal FICA and your Social Security, they are excluded from the calculation.
Okay. And what do you mean excluded? How are they excluding? As an example?
So those are payments that the business still will be responsible for.
Okay. Okay. All right. Somebody asked.
That's me. My question is, I am a small business, and hello?
Yes.
I'm here.
I am a small business, and I have already filled out, I think it's called the disaster loan assistance, and I got a application submitted, application number. But what I noticed, it said to turn in something to release so they could look at my tax record or something. Well, I never did see that form or anything, and I haven't heard anything from them. And I also, and with me applying for that particular loan, do I still need to apply for the PPP loan?
Okay, let me stop you right here. So it sounds to me like you had applied for the economic injury disaster loan prior to April 30th. Okay, and that was for the EIDL loan because of the questions that was being asked. Now, for the $10,000 grant, you have to reapply again. Okay. If you have not resubmitted, you don't qualify for the $10,000. You won't lose your place in line, sir, but the only way that you're going to get the $10,000 is you have to resubmit and specifically put a check in the box saying, yes, I want this $10,000 grant. I will tell you that let me finish and I'll give you a chance to ask your question. I will tell you that in the new submission, we're not asking for nearly as much information that we asked for in the original application. Because you did this before, it will literally take you 10 minutes.
Okay.
And once
what is
SBA gets,
that?
you want to go to SBA.gov and just follow the links for disaster assistance.
Okay, well,
The URL is, go ahead, sir.
I think that's what I filled out because it says COVID-19 economic injury disaster loan application.
Okay, you did that already. This application has been around. But do you recall checking a box saying, yes, I want the $10,000 grant?
I did remember checking a box that said that.
Okay, then you're okay then. You're okay then. But in
do.
that new application request, we did not ask for the other information, all of the 4506 and some of the other things that we asked for in when the program initially got started. We extremely reduced the amount of information that we were asking for, and that's why you can complete this application literally in 15 minutes.
Okay, yes, and it was a short time that I finished it, and maybe I'm just remember when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, okay, you need to have this and that, but I did not. I filled it out a week later, actually.
Okay, all right, you're okay then,
Wow.
And you should have received an application number. That means that you're in the queue, and you should be getting a call sometime this week from our processing center.
Okay, good. That was the thing.
Within the 21 days.
It's in 3 weeks that someone will be notified.
Yeah, they say 21 days it's about, but keep in mind, if it goes a little bit beyond 21 days, just bear in mind, just remember that there is 30 million small businesses that qualify for this particular loan program, and we probably got applications from 30 million of you. So it is a significant challenge for us, but we're getting through it. We're working day and night. We have all kinds of different shifts working, and we're doing everything in our power to try to push through these things as quickly as possible.
Okay. I'm going to, because I know we're on a time frame too, John, I'm going to ask two more questions from the audience. Will you go over the grants for faith-based organizations?
So the same thing applies. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program applies to faith-based organizations. Let me go back. It applies to not only small businesses, but privately held nonprofit organizations. Have to be a 501c3 or a 501c19. If you're one of those two entities, you can apply for the same benefit that these small businesses are applying for as well. That includes the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, as well as the Paycheck Protection Loan Program. And everything that I said for businesses apply to nonprofit organizations that are 501c3s or 501c19s.
Two more questions, and then we're
Paula, Paula, I think I included in the handout a specific Q&A of frequently asked questions for churches.
Yes.
Can you, and if there's any churches online that are listening, you'll get some information just answering a lot of questions on how you as a faith-based organization can apply for this assistance as well. Yes,
and I did send that out. If you didn't receive it, email me, and all of this is also on the website. Two more questions. It says, if I have a rental property and an investment property, should I be applying for something through FEMA?
No, the assistance is only coming from us in this particular program. So the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, you apply directly to SBA. If you were harmed by this particular thing, and even the Paycheck Protection Program loan is a form of an SBA guaranteed loan. You go to the banks for that one, but it is being backed by the Small Business Administration.
Okay. And then Akishi asks, so far I don't see any loss, but I'm sure I will be losing some revenue this or next month. Should I go ahead and apply for the loan? And will I
I
qualify?
want to know what industry she is that she's not seeing any adverse impact on her business. What is she doing?
Well,
But yes, you can. And let me say this, Paula. I want to encourage everybody to apply. Okay, it's available to everybody, and even if you're not seeing any impact right now, who knows how long this thing is going to go? Okay, and you want to make sure that if things change for the worse, especially in this particular case, you have something that you can fall back on. Hey, SBA approved me for a $100,000 loan. I don't need it right now, but in the event that I do, I have access to it. And if nothing else, is a $10,000 non-refundable grant just by taking 15 minutes of your time to kind of apply for this. Why
Amen.
wouldn't you apply?
Amen. That's an amen on that one. And and then someone asked, this is the last one. Is it hold on. Can you apply for multiple, if you have multiple LLCs, can you apply for multiple loans under the LLCs?
Yes.
Okay.
And does that mean that if I got 3 LLCs and I put in 3 EIDL loan application requests, do I get the $10,000 for each of those LLCs? The answer is yes.
Okay.
What are LLCs?
I'm gonna have to. We'll have
How
to.
much net sales?
Huh?
I said, how much in net sales do you need to have in order to qualify for the $10,000?
So you have to be a small business, and the way that we're defining this is that if you have less than 500 employees, you're pretty much safe. If you have more than 500 employees, it doesn't mean that you automatically are disqualified, because we're making some exceptions for certain industries where there is a higher level of employees. There are some additional things that you have to demonstrate in order to qualify for this program. But if you're a small business and you have less than 500 employees, there's a very good chance that you're going to meet our eligibility criteria for participation.
Okay. All right. Well, I think this concludes tonight, John. I surely do appreciate you doing this off hours for us.
Not a problem. Let me just throw in one more shameless plug. SBA.gov is the website. And I know many of you are in the Georgia area. There is an SBA office in Georgia. You can get information by dialing I don't have the local number in front of me, but if you can call information and get telephone numbers to the local district office, they will be more than happy to walk you through this particular process. And also our website is an outstanding place to get some additional information about many of the programs that we have. I will also mention that this particular program and the legislation that President Trump signed into play was a joint effort between the Small Business Administration and the Department of Treasury. If you can't find answers to your questions off of the SBA site, you might want to try Treasury. They have a whole section on their website designed to answer questions. There's some frequently asked questions and answers on their website as well. And good place to start to get many of the questions to your answer. And I'm going to strongly encourage everybody online to apply. And if you get a loan, if you get the $10,000 and you say, I don't want anything else, do not say when the SBA calls you, no, I don't want it. Because you never know.
That's the wrong answer. Yes. And everyone asked where the recording, this will be uploaded on the GPI Win TV. If you go to gpiwintv.com, it'll pull up the YouTube. And please subscribe to our channel, because I'm beginning to build out this TV channel so that it'll be a resource for all of you in this space. Also, don't forget, on tomorrow, we're going to have Mr. Juzane sharing his wisdom. And on Saturday will be the orientation. So make sure you tell a friend as we continue to build out the community. And John, we have people from Texas and California. So we're covering all bases, not necessarily just Georgia. So thank you,
Alrighty.
thank you again. And
Alrighty, Paul.
the community appreciates you as well. I'm getting a lot of kudos. So thank you again, John.
Alrighty, take care. And
Right.
everybody out there, just be safe. Remember to continue to practice social distancing. This thing is kind of crazy, but we'll get through it. God willing, we'll get through it. So hang in there and be safe.
Thank you for your hard work out there too. Be safe. All right.
Alrighty.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye-bye.